The record doesn't support Toyota's statements that it conducted extensive testing. The truth is that we don't know whether the electronics plays a role in sudden unattended acceleration, and Toyota doesn't know either. What's disappointing to me is learning that Toyota seems to have focused more on discrediting its critics than on resolving the problem. When Dr. Gilbert testified before this subcommittee in February, he explained that he found a way to induce sudden unattended acceleration in a Toyota vehicle without triggering an error code in the vehicle's computer. Committee staff have spoken with several academics who describe Dr. Gilbert's experiment as sensible and as a reasonable way to begin to study unattended acceleration. Dr. Christian Gerdes, a professor at Stanford University who Toyota asked to review Dr. Gilbert's work, told the committee that Dr. Gilbert's approach was a legitimate starting point for a more in-depth inquiry into the causes of sudden unattended acceleration. Unfortunately, Toyota appears to have been more interested in messaging than scientific inquiry. After the hearing, Toyota hired a public relations firm to advise the company on its public response to lawsuits claiming that electronics play a role in a sudden unattended acceleration. We know from the committee's investigation that the PR firm Benison Strategy Group, or BSG, conducted a poll to learn more about what Toyota could do to repair damage to the company's image among educated consumers known as opinion elites. A presentation by Benison Strategy Group shows that among the key findings from the poll, Toyota learned the following. Debunking Kane Gilbert's testimony will be critical for restoring confidence among elites and reassuring audiences that electronic throttle control is, in fact, not an issue. That's a document, March 5th. We reviewed an updated BSG document showing that the results from another Toyota poll to test some aggressive messages for possible use in future public statements or advertising. This poll referred to Dr. Gilbert's experiments as phony, shoddy science, a hoax, and a parlor trick that would never happen in real life. And we have a document on that. The BSG summarized the results from this new poll in a presentation dated March 8, 2010, suggesting that Toyota should try to damage Dr. Gilbert's credibility by accusing him of having, quote, monetary or self-interested motives, end of quote. Toyota told the committee that the company did not follow its poster's suggestion to attack Dr. Gilbert, but the documents suggest otherwise. On March 8th, a Monday, Toyota held a press conference and released a report by Exponent criticizing Dr. Gilbert's work. 2 days before the press conference, the vice president of Toyota's public relations firm noted in an email to a colleague the importance of finishing the poll before this event, saying, and I'm quoting now, "We really, really need to get this done, especially with elites. Toyota has a press conference on Monday and need our data to know what to say." That's the document we have right here. At that press conference, before Exponent presented its findings, Toyota spokesman Mike Michaels disparaged Dr. Gilbert's work and said it was paid for by an advocate for trial lawyers, end of quote. Exponent report on Dr. Gilbert's research was a hit job, not solid science. Exponent confirmed the key conclusions that Dr. Gilbert had drawn in his report, but then disparaged Dr. Gilbert for not testing the likelihood of the faults he identified, even though Exponent never did this analysis either. A couple more buzzes there. Exponent added new steps. Exponent added new steps to Dr. Gilbert's experiment and mischaracterized others, all in an attempt to make his outcome seem unlikely and to invent flaws in his analysis. But independent experts have defended Dr. Gilbert's approach, including a Stanford University professor who reviewed the report at Toyota's request and described Dr. Gilbert's experiment as perfectly reasonable starting point. When I look at Toyota's approach, I do not understand why the company is attacking Dr. Gilbert for trying to find a root cause of sudden unattended acceleration. Toyota ought to be undertaking a comprehensive review and encouraging automotive experts to come forward with ideas of what could be causing the problem. Based on the committee's review of Exponent's work for Toyota in this regard, we remain concerned that this is not occurring. The committee asked Toyota and Exponent to produce all reports, analysis, or communications describing the results of Exponent's work for Toyota related to unintended acceleration or electronic throttle control. We also asked for all contracts, agreements, memorandum, or correspondence concerning the scope of Exponent's work for Toyota. From these responses, we've learned that only direction for additional studies reside in the minds of Exponent employees. It appears that Exponent's only public written work to date is the incomplete interim study and a report attacking Dr. Gilbert's credibility. I find this extremely troubling given the fact that Toyota and Exponent have both informed the committee they are taking a comprehensive look at the issue of sudden unintended acceleration in Toyota and Lexus vehicles. To be fair, Toyota has made progress on processing their recalls. They have completed 80% of the sticky pedal recalls. They have completed 30% of their floor mat recalls. They have also made some management changes that we hope will lead to improved safety culture. One of the most significant improvements that Toyota could make would be to install brake override technology in all of their vehicles. Brake override technology ensures that if both the accelerator and the brake are pressed at the same time, the brake will override the accelerator. Toyota told the committee that beginning in 2011, all vehicles will have this feature, but the company is being more selective about which older models will receive the software upgrade. Despite the fact that installing brake override technology on older vehicles would only cost $50 per vehicle, Toyota does not plan to offer this option, even at the owner's expense, to owners of certain models. I look forward to hearing why Toyota won't offer brake override to their customers with older vehicles, even if the customer pays for it. Since our February hearing, NHTSA and Toyota appear to have improved their working relationship. NHTSA officials tell us that Toyota has shown more willingness to address issues of concern. NHTSA has informed us it has commissioned 2 studies to examine unintended acceleration in vehicles. The first is a study to be conducted by NASA scientists who examined Toyota's electronic throttle control systems for possible problems associated with their hardware and/or software. This report is targeted to be completed by the end of August. The second study will be conducted by a panel of independent scientists selected by the National Academy of Sciences. The NAS study will offer a comprehensive examination of unintended acceleration and electronic control systems across all automobile manufacturers. This study should be completed by fall of 2011. I'd like to thank both Mr. Strickland and Mr. Lentz for their testimony today and for their ongoing cooperation with the committee's investigation. Mr. Lentz, we appreciate Toyota and its outside counsel, Ted Hester, for the company's responsiveness to our several requests for documents and for substantive briefings. I wish I could say we received the same level of cooperation from Toyota's consultant, Exponent. Unfortunately, Exponent has withheld responsive documents and information from the committee and has even modified responsive documents before producing them to us in direct violation of the committee's instructions. It's ironic that the firm Toyota has hired to conduct an independent investigation has behaved like it has something to hide from this committee. I'll next turn to Mr. Burgess for an opening statement, please.
Thank you, Chairman Stupak, and as always, thank you and Chairman Waxman for convening this important hearing. Welcome to our witnesses who are here with us today. Our first hearing on the Toyota problems almost 3 months ago to the day, and at that time we had a lot of questions but not a lot of answers as to what was causing the sudden unintended acceleration events in Toyotas. So today we're here for answers, but it also appears that we will not be getting those. I was hoping this hearing was called because there was some new information that was coming to the fore, but in fact we may be having this hearing because we found out that Toyota did a poll. Now, Mr. Chairman, if polling is found to be at the level of a high crime or misdemeanor, this dais would be suddenly and irrevocably silent because we'd all go away. We're not going to get those answers today. I'm concerned that we continue to have hearings where we literally go in circles because this is an important issue and it needs to be resolved. It needs to be resolved for the safety of Toyota's customers, and it needs to be resolved for the future of auto sales by that manufacturer. This hearing does seem premature. Toyota has commissioned Exponent, an engineering and scientific firm, to do a top-to-bottom review of its cars to figure out the cause of these events. the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has asked for NASA's failure analysis experts to take a look at Toyota's electronics. As of today, both of those studies are ongoing. That's a good thing. We just don't have answers yet. According to Exponent, they haven't found the answer to what is causing these events, and NASA's work is just getting started. In fact, at the hearing previous, Ranking Member Barton asked the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration to not just find the car that was in question that day, the car of Rhonda and Eddie Smith, but find it and tear it apart to find out what the problem was. Now, NHTSA has found the Smith's car and has had it for almost 3 months. According to NHTSA's emails to the minority staff, engineers have run some tests on the car and do plan to do more. But here's what they found to date, and let me quote so there will be no question about it. Quote, "Nothing remarkable," close quote. Mr. Chairman, I would ask that these emails from NHTSA and the minority staff be included in the record. Apparently the Smith's car was delivered on February 26, and that's the time that it's been under study. 3 months later, we don't have an answer to what went wrong with the Smith's car. Never mind answers to all of the other Toyotas that have experienced events that are so far inexplicable. And that's not really surprising because these are, after all, very complicated problems that potentially involve electronics, software, and mechanical issues. Finding the right answer is going to take time, but the important part is finding the right answer and not rushing to an answer, because otherwise it'll be impossible to identify the right solution. If we don't find the right solution, the cars are not safer, the public is not protected, and Toyota's reputation continues to suffer. As this subcommittee is an investigative body, we should be careful not to draw conclusions about the nature or the comprehensiveness of these investigations while they are ongoing. Both NASA and Exponent have laid out a number of areas to examine, including software, hardware, systems interaction, and magnetic interference. My understanding is that NASA and Exponent are looking at many of the same issues. Mr. Chairman, that's called independent verification. That is actually part of the scientific method, and it's a good thing. I do want to impress upon the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and on Exponent that our patience of this committee is not endless when it comes to getting answers. Exponent has recently provided the committee with a working draft of their work. I will accept that this draft is incomplete, that the information in it has not been thoroughly tested, and that Exponent has not identified the causes of these events. That's fine. But when it comes to the scope of Exponent's work, we've all seen, we have seen test results and raw data, but no paper that sets out their plans for testing Toyotas. Essentially, we've been told to take their word for it as to what exactly they're doing. Exponent is not here today to speak for itself. Since our last meeting, we've met with one of the Exponent engineers working on the Toyota case. Perhaps we still don't have a full picture of their work. Mr. Lentz, I hope to hear from you. What I hope to hear from you today is that what Toyota's strategy is going forward for solving this problem, and that Toyota is committed to working and sharing with this committee and the public whatever Exponent finds when it finds it. I'd also like to welcome Administrator Strickland from NHTSA. NHTSA has opened a number of different inquiries into Toyota's responsiveness when it comes to recalls and safety concerns. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has also penalized Toyota over $16 million with respect to the timeliness of Toyota's recall, which Toyota paid yesterday without admitting fault to the underlying charges. Mr. Strickland, I know you recently traveled to Japan with Secretary LaHood to meet with Toyota. Before that meeting, Secretary LaHood said Toyota was safety deaf. After that meeting, Secretary LaHood said Toyota is now listening and paying attention to NHTSA's warnings, and that is quite a turnaround in one meeting's time. And Mr. Strickland, I would like to know if you agree with the Secretary's assessment and why you are confident that now today Toyota has gotten the message that before seemed to have some difficulty getting through. I'd also like to learn from Administrator Strickland how Toyota's working relationship with NHTSA has improved since our last hearing. Based on Secretary LaHood's testimony at our last hearing and on your testimony before the Commerce, Trade, and Consumer Protection Subcommittee in March, I believe it is NHTSA's view that it had the necessary authorities and data to do the proper oversight of Toyota. If that is true, was the only problem Toyota? Are you still confident today that NHTSA's investigations were as thorough as they should have been and that NHTSA had the necessary skills and expertise to perform the same? Is NHTSA doing a systemic review of other recalls to assure itself that the other manufacturers are being responsive? On that note, Mr. Lentz, I do want to make sure that recent improvements that Toyota has announced, like smart team inspections of cars and quality panels, are not a matter of form over substance. I hope you can offer us some specifics about how this has improved Toyota's responsiveness to its drivers, to our constituents, and to NHTSA. Mr. Chairman, you've been indulgent. I will yield back the balance of my time.
Chairman Waxman for opening statement, please, sir.
Chairman Stupak, I want to thank you for holding today's hearing on sudden unintended acceleration in Toyota-made cars and trucks. This is our second hearing on this subject, since Toyota has already recalled millions of vehicles due to consumer complaints about sudden unintended acceleration in their vehicles. A key question that was raised at our first hearing was whether thousands of complaints of these vehicles were reported by consumers for sudden acceleration could be linked to electronic defects in the vehicles. And that's still the subject of our hearing today. In February, we had our hearing on this, and I asked Toyota Motor Sales President James Lentz whether he was certain that the recalls Toyota had ordered, which involved replacing floor mats and sticky accelerator pedals, would solve the problem of cars racing out of control. He replied, not totally. This appears to have been a rare moment of corporate candor, because the very next day, Toyota Motor Sales issued a press release entitled Clarification of Testimony Regarding Effectiveness of Recalls, in which the company reiterated that extensive testing made it confident that no problems exist with electronic throttle control systems in its vehicles. The same day, before a different House committee, the president of Toyota Motor Company, Akio Toyoda, testified he's absolutely confident there's no problem with the design of Toyota's electronic throttle control system because very rigorous testing identified no problem or malfunction. A few days later, Toyota ran a full-page advertisement in other papers, among others in the Washington Post, declaring that floor mat and sticky pedal recall solutions are effective and durable, and that Toyota is confident that no problems exist with the electronic throttle control system. Well, these assurances are baffling. In preparation for our last hearing, we had received over 100,000 pages of documents from Toyota and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. What was most notable about those documents was what was missing. There was no evidence that Toyota or NHTSA took a serious look at the possibility that electronic defects could be causing the problem. In the months since that hearing, the committee has investigated the basis for Toyota's repeated assertion. We asked Toyota to bring from Japan the engineers most familiar with the testing of the throttle system, and we did a lengthy transcribed interview with these officials. We took a transcribed interview with the person most knowledgeable of the testing Toyota is doing in the United States, and this is through a firm called Exponent, and we reviewed many more documents. What we have learned is deeply troubling. There is no evidence that Toyota has conducted extensive or rigorous testing of its vehicles for potential electronic defects that could cause sudden unintended acceleration. Our colleague, Mr. Burgess, said there's a top-to-bottom review. We shouldn't jump to conclusions. Well, but Toyota has already jumped to the conclusion and made it over and over again that they've ruled out any problem with the electronics. We asked Toyota for the basis of its assertion that vehicles do not have electronic defects, and they pointed to two primary justifications. One is the testing that's done in recent months by this consulting firm Exponent. That's being done here in the United States. The other is the pre-market testing done over the years by its engineers in Japan. So we focused our attention on these two areas. We looked at Exponent's work, which is claimed to have been comprehensive and independent, but the documents reviewed by the committee don't support these assertions. On the screen, I hope we'll see a record that neither Toyota or Exponent produced to the committee that explained the relationship between the committee's consulting work or the scope of Exponent's work. It's a contract, and it's a contract by Toyota and their consulting firm for engineering consulting services related to class actions filed against Toyota. Nowhere in this document do lawyers ask Exponent to conduct a comprehensive examination of sudden unintended acceleration. In fact, the words sudden unintended acceleration did not even appear. So our committee interviewed Dr. Shukri Suri, the Exponent engineer who oversaw the work, and what we learned from him was astonishing. Exponent has no written work for the plan for this project, no written timeline, no written specifications for the experiments it has run or plans to run. They have no written list of the potential causes of sudden unintended acceleration that it planned to study. And though he's personally responsible for the hardware, software, electronic interference testing that Exponent has done or will do for Toyota, Dr. Suri has no written notes on Exponent's work. We asked him to explain this. How can there be this remarkable lack of documentation? And he explained that writing down what Exponent does would limit the creativity of the engineers working on the project. Well, that's preposterous. A former Exponent engineer told our committee staff that the reason they didn't write anything down is to avoid creating documents that might have to be produced in a lawsuit. Well, Toyota's lawyers appear to be involved in every aspect of Exponent's work. The lawyers have the right to approve the publication of the Exponent's work. Dr. Suri reported that committee staff, to committee staff, that all communications with Toyota have counsel present. And the two reports Exponent has issued both state that they were prepared for Bowman and Brook, the law firm defending Toyota in litigation. Exponent has issued two public reports to date, and they're not a comprehensive examination of sudden unintended acceleration. The first was an interim report. It was requested by the lawyers for use at our February hearing, and Dr. Suri told our staff that this report was unusual because Exponent had not completed its work. And outside experts criticize this report because they have an unclear methodology and an overly narrow focus. They have a second report. This was even narrower, designed only to rebut the testimony provided by our expert witness at the committee's first hearing. It did not offer any discussion of Exponent's investigation of sudden unintended acceleration other than its replication of a laboratory experiment conducted by the committee's witness. Well, these reports do not even come close to supporting Toyota's contention that Exponent has thoroughly examined Toyota's electronic throttle control systems. Now, the other basis for their assertion is that they did pre-market testing by their own engineers in Japan. Well, we interviewed those engineers, and they told us that their testing is done before there's mass production. But once the design is completed, they didn't do any additional testing. Now, the pre-market testing has significant limitations. The company's durability testing is done only on prototype vehicles and components. They don't test cars and parts that are actually used by drivers. The sample sizes are very small. In fact, only a single vehicle is tested. Independent experts consulted by our committee have told us that Toyota would need a much larger sample size to rule out potential causes of a rare and intermittent event like sudden unintended acceleration. In addition, Toyota acknowledged to committee staff that it does not control the testing performed on critical parts of the electronic throttle system that are done by its suppliers. They have no documentation to confirm the results of any tests that these suppliers chose to perform. The pre-market testing regime may be appropriate for testing the design of Toyota vehicles before manufacturing starts, but no amount of pre-marketing tests can be a substitute for a rigorous examination needed to identify a post-manufacturing defect. And there's no evidence Toyota has done this post-manufacturing testing. Well, the results of our examination raise serious questions. Toyota has repeatedly told the public it has conducted extensive testing of its vehicles for electronic defects. We can find no basis for these assertions. Toyota's assertions may be good public relations, but they don't appear to be true. Even more confounding is why Toyota has not done more. If they're serious about putting safety first, how can they justify hiring a litigation consulting firm that takes no written notes to lead its investigation into potential defects? The public has a right to expect that Toyota will do everything possible to find any potential electronic defect. But Toyota didn't do that. Instead, Toyota asked its defense counsel to hire a firm whose mission appears to be the exact opposite, to obfuscate and find no problems. I want to be clear about what we know and what we don't know. I'm not an engineer and I'm not a scientist. But I do know that dozens of people have died in accidents linked to runaway Toyota vehicles. Many of these incidents have occurred in vehicles that do not have faulty floor mats or sticky pedals. Toyota's priority should be to do everything it can to figure out what's causing these frightening events, not to protect itself from lawsuits. And I do not believe Toyota has met this obligation. Chairman Stupak, I look forward to hearing from our witnesses, and thank you for convening the hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Barton, for opening statement, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think Chairman Waxman took his time and my time. He certainly gave an extensive statement. I'm just going to submit my statement for the record and make a few extemporaneous remarks. I share Chairman Waxman's concern about finding this problem. I'm not omnipotent, though. Life's complicated. It's easy to sit up here on the podium and point fingers and demand results and act as if we know what the answers are. But that's not how life is, and that's not how engineering is. It's in the best interest of NHTSA to solve this problem as quickly as possible. It's obviously in the best interest of Toyota and the entire automobile industry. I agree with Chairman Waxman that I don't believe this is a sticky pedal floor mat problem. But having said that, trying to find a bug in millions of lines of software or find a glitch in a hardware system for the electronic ignition and steering system is very, very difficult. I am happy that NHTSA got the vehicle that purchased the vehicle or obtained the vehicle that had the runaway acceleration problem that the Smiths talked about in our hearing here several months ago. It's my understanding that the NHTSA engineers have been evaluating that vehicle and haven't yet found the problem. I'm also pleased that NASA is involved. I'm pleased that Toyota has hired an independent firm to try to figure out the problem. Hopefully today we'll get some answers from our NHTSA administrator and the president of Toyota. This is a serious problem. There is absolutely no question that people have less confidence in the Toyota vehicles that have experienced most of the runaway acceleration problems, and they expect the company and the government to solve that problem as quickly and expeditiously as possible. But it is very, very difficult in the real world. We just have to keep giving our best faith efforts, and under the leadership of Mr. Waxman and Mr. Stupak and Ranking Member Burgess and myself, we will use our resources so that the American people know what the issues are, and if there is something we need to do legislatively, we will certainly try to do that. I thank you, Mr. Stupak and Mr. Waxman, for continuing this investigation, and we will be very supportive that the facts are put on the table so the American people know what the facts are. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Barton. Mr. Dingell for an opening statement, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I commend you for your continuing vigilance in the matter of Toyota's recalls related to sudden unintended acceleration. I'm delighted to welcome our witnesses today, Administrator Strickland and Mr. Lentz of Toyota. I commend you, Mr. Chairman, for your insistence on vigorous yet fair oversight in this matter. For as you are well aware, thorough oversight leads to effective legislation, and this subcommittee has been doing that for a long time. In view of that, I note that the Subcommittee on Commerce, Trade, and Consumer Protection will mark up the Motor Vehicle Safety Act of 2010 this afternoon. Section 101 of that bill requires the Secretary of Transportation to promulgate a motor safety vehicle standard on electronic systems, which should enable him to determine whether such standard is reasonable, practicable, and appropriate. Our hearing today affords us the opportunity to examine the state of research, both by government and private industry, on these systems and to assess the feasibility of promulgating and implementing a federal motor vehicle safety standard covering them. To that end, Mr. Chairman, I intend to ask candid questions of our witnesses about the progress of their respective organizations that has been made in determining what, if any, effects surrounding environments have on electronic components in vehicles. While I believe that Section 101 of the Motor Vehicle Safety Act is written with sufficient administrative discretion for the Secretary of Transportation, I want to be able to be sure that the Department will be able to perform the research necessary to comply with the requirements of that section. That is an important question to be addressed. I would also note that surrounding environments have in the past affected motor vehicle safety, and I would remind that electronic flux was a source of potential danger from unintended explosions of airbags in times past, something which caused injury and death to American people. Further, I will seek strict assurances from Toyota that it is taking seriously charges that electronic interference may have caused sudden unintended acceleration in the vehicles recalled late last year and early this year, and that Toyota is working diligently to assess them as well as to correct them if need be. And I want to be sure that they are doing the necessary research on the question of safety as opposed to just defensive measures for the corporation. I look forward to productive conversation today, and I thank you for your courtesy, Mr. Chairman. I observe again that your work here in this subcommittee has led to better legislation, good fact-finding, and far better service of the public interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dingell. Mr. Gingrey for opening statement, please, 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today's hearing on Toyota and NHTSA's response to the problem of sudden unintended acceleration, while topically important, I think from reading the provided testimony that this hearing will likely yield more questions than answers. In fact, many of the fundamental questions that members of this committee and that consumers have will likely remain unanswered today as both Toyota and NHTSA discuss the ongoing status of their reviews of the potential connection between unintended rapid acceleration and the electronic throttle control system. Mr. Chairman, the American people are certainly owed answers about the safety of their vehicles. However, what the American people do not deserve is another hasty legislative response in the form of a bill that few have read, nobody understands, and that bears unintended consequences much worse than the consequences of inaction. However, once NHTSA and Toyota actually complete their various reviews of the potential flaws of automotive electronic systems, I believe that it will be very important for this committee to review those results, understand those results, and then act in a manner appropriate to those findings. Certainly, with automation and electronic engineering continuing to replace the traditional mechanisms, we must also ensure that we have the proper metrics to conduct diagnoses and ask the right questions to flush out the potential impacts of these systems on the safety of our automobiles. With that, Mr. Chairman, I thank you and I yield back.
Thank you. Ms. Christensen for opening statement, please.
Thank you, Chairman Stupak. Again, given that my 2 daughters, 3 grandchildren, and I drive in Toyotas, I'm really pleased that we're having this hearing today to monitor the response of Toyota to the accidents and deaths attributed to the sudden unintended acceleration of their vehicles. I look forward to the testimony of Mrs. Strickland and Mr. Lentz on what the testing has shown thus far, what responses and remedies are being employed, and also to hear that they're being employed in the U.S. territories, which are often overlooked, as well as in the 50 states. With that, I'll yield back the balance of my time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Griffiths for opening statement, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank you and the ranking member for calling this important hearing today. In Huntsville, Alabama, the middle of my district, Toyota employs 777 people, builds 6-cylinder, 8-cylinder engines, and recently has added the 4-cylinder engine to the plant. We will employ, or Toyota will employ, approximately 1,000 people in this district. Toyota has done more than just be a good employer in Huntsville. They've given back to the community in many ways. In fact, during the recent slowdown in production in response to the recession, Toyota did not lay off one permanent worker. During this time, they sent some employers out into the community, while others stayed at the plant and worked together to streamline and improve the daily functions in both quality and safety. Since this subcommittee has met to discuss Toyota, the number of vehicle recall remedies is nearly 3.5 million. They've also taken steps to deal with communication problems between North America and Japan and commissioned a study to investigate the sudden unintended acceleration issues. I believe that Toyota has shown a good faith effort to fix problems and learn from these events to better serve consumers in the future. And it seems evident by recent sales that customers have faith in Toyota's ability to correct past problems. I might add that the chairman of the committee seemed upset that there was no agreement from Toyota with Dr. Gilbert's findings. I find that not only acceptable, but we've had no one corroborate Dr. Gilbert's findings either. So if we're going to base our discussion on a single individual's experiment and not a scientific method, I think we're maybe on the wrong track there. I don't think there's anyone more interested in making sure that their vehicles are safe than Toyota. I don't think there's anyone more interested in the safety of the public than Toyota as far as this situation is concerned. So it seems that there's an attitude that somehow we're not here in good faith to do what's best for the public, and I think we need to examine our attitude and maybe take a different approach. I yield back the balance of my time, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Braley, opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask unanimous consent to submit my written statement and then just make some brief extemporaneous remarks.
All right. Mr. Latta.
No, I was asking for unanimous consent to submit my full statement.
Go ahead.
During our last hearing on this very important issue, Ranking Member Barton drew on his experience as an engineer to challenge both Toyota and NHTSA to get to the bottom of this problem and to do so with a sense of clarity and purpose that had been missing in Toyota's approach to the possibility of an electronic component to the problem of sudden anticipated acceleration. So when the ranking member stated at the conclusion of his remarks today he was pleased that Toyota had hired an independent firm, I think it was based upon the representations that Toyota made at our last hearing that, in fact, it had hired Exponent and given it a mission to get to the bottom of this problem with an unlimited budget. The only problem with that perception is it's contrary to the documents that I have been provided and the committee has been provided in response to requests for information I made at our last hearing. Because the documents we've been provided with show that Toyota's trial lawyers, not Toyota, engaged Exponent to conduct this work on December 7th of 2009 and did not engage Exponent for the purpose of getting to the bottom of this problem, but for the purpose of defending class action claims filed against Toyota. And that's the problem with Toyota's response since our last hearing. If you look at what's been done, it's been primarily an effort to try to attack the credibility of the sole witness who testified on the connection, the possible connection between an electronic or computer failure and the problem of sudden and unanticipated acceleration in Toyota's vehicles. And that's the disturbing question that we need answers to at this hearing today. We need to look at the financial relationship between Exponent and Toyota and try to get to the bottom of why so much time has been spent focusing time and resources attempting to discredit the work of Professor David Gilbert, instead of getting to the root cause of this problem and determining once and for all whether electronic failure is a cause of the problem. That's why I look forward to the testimony of our witnesses, and I hope that eventually everyone involved in this investigation gets to that problem. And I yield back.
Mr. Braley, I'm sorry I didn't hear you before when you had asked for your opening statement be made part of record. It should be noted that all opening statements of members of the committee their opening statements will be part of record. I also move that the contents of our document binder be made part of the record without objection, so be it. My intent is, members know we have the President of Mexico speaking around 11 o'clock, is try to get through all opening statements, and if we go over a little bit, let's try to get our opening statements done before we have to recess for a bit. Now, Mr. Latta for an opening statement.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Burgess, thanks very much for holding this hearing today. First and foremost, I believe it is important that these hearings are held to get to the facts regarding the sudden unintended acceleration. Tragically, according to NHTSA, 52 people have died in the past decade due to the incidence of the sudden unintended acceleration of Toyota vehicles. NHTSA has initiated several queries into Toyota recalls, and the agency has leveled a $16.4 million fine on the company. Additionally, NASA and the National Academy of Sciences have been enlisted by NHTSA to undertake a study of the issue. Specifically, NASA will examine unintended acceleration in Toyota vehicles, and the National Academy of Sciences will analyze that acceleration and the role of the electronic vehicle systems across the automobile industry. It is also my understanding that neither is complete at this time. Through its recall, deployment of swift market analysis response for smart teams, third-party analysis, and the addition of industry-leading safety features to new models, Toyota is working to provide quality and safe vehicles. I hope this translates into an increased safety level and assurance for Toyota drivers. Safety is extremely important, especially when it comes to the automobile industry. I am concerned by any precedent that is set by the government, that the government knows best when it comes to vehicle design. Later today, I will participate in a markup of the Motor Vehicle Safety Act of 2010, which will attempt to dictate to auto manufacturers the design of certain parts. Government mandates have a detrimental effect on the industry and, in turn, the economy. I represent the 5th Congressional District of Ohio, which is the largest manufacturing district in the state and home to many auto suppliers. The technology involved in automobile industry and engineering certainly has changed and advanced over the years, and it is important that Toyota customers and the American public and policymakers understand the electronically controlled throttle system and the potential for unintended acceleration in Toyotas and all other vehicles. While I was not yet a member of the Energy and Commerce Committee for the February hearing, I look forward to the hearing today and hearing from the testimony from the witnesses on the panel. Mr. Chairman, I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Latta. Ms. Schakowsky for an opening statement, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 3 months ago, this subcommittee held a hearing about sudden acceleration, but many questions remained unanswered. In particular, we're still unclear about cases where sticky petals and flawed floor mats were ruled out as possible causes. One of the few people who proposed a possible answer, has been mentioned, was David Gilbert, an associate professor of automotive technology at Southern Illinois University in my home state. Dr. Gilbert testified about research he'd done in which he was able to replicate a situation where sudden unintended acceleration was caused by electronic signals but not recorded on the vehicle's event data recorder. At the same hearing, Mr. Lentz, who is also here today, testified on behalf of Toyota, saying, quote, in December, we asked Exponent, a world-class engineering and scientific consulting firm, to conduct a comprehensive independent analysis for electronic throttle control system with an unlimited budget, unquote. But what did Exponent come back with? In March, they released a report that did not conduct a comprehensive report of Toyota's electronic throttle control system and possible flaws. Instead, their report was entirely a critique of Dr. Gilbert's experiment. Of course, scientific research can be questioned and disputed, but Exponent's efforts did not even attempt to find out what the American people or this subcommittee want to know. Our constituents want answers, and they want an in-depth investigation that identifies the causes of potentially fatal malfunctions in their vehicles. I am glad that NHTSA has moved forward and has asked both NASA and the National Academy of Sciences to help conduct an investigation that encompasses not just Toyota, but all vehicles with electronic throttle systems. I look forward to hearing from Mr. Strickland about that research and when we can expect to hear some results. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Ms. Chakowski. Ms. Blackburn for opening statement, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to our witnesses. I will have to say, and I know you've heard it from many others, we've got concerns over the timing. I have concerns over the tone of this hearing, and it seems like we may be a little bit premature in convening this today. For the record, Mr. Chairman, I would like to submit a letter that I sent to Chairman Dingell in October 2007 asking for a hearing to look into the serious concerns in Tennessee over sudden acceleration in the Toyota Tacoma. That letter again was in October 07. Perhaps if we were a little more proactive in investigating this issue 3 years ago, we would not be in the position that we are now. All too often, Congress is reactive instead of taking action in a timely manner when something is brought to our attention. As a result, we still don't have definitive answers as to what precisely caused the sudden unintended acceleration, and it is naive to believe any of the important answers are going to come to light in this hearing today. I fear that what we're doing is putting the cart before the horse. Many of our constituents look at these hearings and they see this as grandstanding in an attempt to try and vilify a corporation. I've heard from constituents who are employees of suppliers to Toyotas. They are very concerned that this may be something, again, that is being done to vilify and to score cheap political points instead of productively moving forward in an effort to actually fix and effectively address this serious issue that was first brought to the attention of this committee in October 2007. From what I understand from NHTSA and Exponent, there is not even a viable hypothesis put forward as to this issue and a resolution. That being said, again, I want to welcome our witnesses, and I'm looking forward to hearing from them, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you. It should be noted that Mr. Gonzalez, a member of the full committee, is here. Cannot give an opening statement, but when we go to questions, he'll certainly be allowed to answer questions. So thank you for being here, Mr. Gonzalez. Well, that concludes the opening statement by all of our subcommittee members. We'll now move to our first panel. On our first panel, we have the Honorable David Strickland, who's the Administrator of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Mr. Strickland, as you know, it's the policy of this subcommittee to take all testimony under oath. Please be advised you have the right under the rules of the committee to be advised by counsel during your testimony. Do you wish to be represented by counsel?
No, I do not.
Okay, then I'm going to ask you, please rise, raise your right hand, take the oath. You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give to be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, and matter pending before this committee?
I do.
Let the record reflect the witness replied in the affirmative. You are now under oath. If you would like to begin with an opening statement, Mr. Strickland, we would appreciate it.
Thank you, Chairman Stupak and Ranking Member Burgess and members of the committee. We appreciate this opportunity to update you on the activities of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration with regard to unintended acceleration involving Toyota vehicles. NHTSA has been very active on this subject since Secretary LaHood testified before this committee in February. Last week, Secretary LaHood and I traveled to Japan to meet with officials of the Japanese government and Toyota. Toyota officials informed us of changes they have recently made in their management and processes to ensure that Toyota officials here in the U.S. have a direct role in making vehicle recall decisions. The Secretary and I made it very clear to Toyota, including Chairman Toyota himself, that the value of these organizational changes will be determined by the company's future safety actions. NHTSA and the Department of Transportation will be watching. As you know, we initiated 3 separate actions in February: a timeliness query related to the pedal entrapment recall, a timeliness query related to the sticky pedal recall, and an overall recall query looking at both of those recalls if they were sufficient in scope and whether there were other matters related to unintended acceleration in Toyota vehicles. On April the 19th, Toyota agreed to pay $16.375 million in civil penalties in connection with the sticky pedal timeliness query. This is the maximum penalty that NHTSA can assess under current law. We believe the penalty was warranted because Toyota failed to inform us in a timely way about that safety defect. Concurrently, we continue to review the large number of documents submitted by Toyota in response to the pedal entrapment query. We have not reached a decision yet on whether the facts of that case warrant a penalty. NHTSA is also reviewing an extremely large volume of documents received in response to the recall query. We have contracted with the Department of Justice to help us categorize and analyze those documents. That task will take us some time, but it is well underway. NHTSA has also started 2 research efforts to address the issue of unintended acceleration. The National Academy of Sciences, the nation's most respected independent body of top scientific experts, will examine the broad subject of unintended acceleration and electronic vehicle controls across the entire automotive industry. The Academy has begun the process of identifying panel members, and the panel will be established by July. The panel then expects to complete its work within 15 months. The results of the work of the National Academy of Sciences will be important to NHTSA, not only because of unintended acceleration, but also to provide advice on a range of electronics issues that might affect motor vehicle safety as new electronic crash avoidance and other technologies are rapidly proliferating within the vehicle fleet. Separately, we have enlisted NASA scientists with expertise in areas such as computer-controlled electronic systems, electromagnetic interference, and software integrity to help tackle the issue of unintended acceleration in Toyota vehicles. NASA's review will be comprehensive, and it will assist us in determining whether Toyota vehicles may contain safety defects that would warrant a formal investigation. We believe that the pressure applied by NHTSA has been instrumental in bringing about all the recalls Toyota has undertaken to address unintended acceleration. We will go wherever the evidence leads us to address the root causes of unintended acceleration. We will open additional investigations and push for recalls where warranted. It is our hope that Toyota's recently revamped approach to more effectively deal with safety defects will reveal a Toyota that is quick to respond to all vehicle safety issues, including sudden unintended acceleration. Of course, NHTSA is working and will continue to work with this committee and with the Senate Commerce Committee on legislative proposals that would address the unintended acceleration issue across the industry. If enacted, this legislation would significantly increase and enhance NHTSA's authority and the agency's leverage in dealing with all manufacturers. This leverage would be particularly important in cases where manufacturers are reluctant to perform the necessary safety recalls or who are not completely truthful in submitting information to NHTSA. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Burgess, and I look forward to answering the committee's questions.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. We're going to stand in recess until for 1 hour. The President of Mexico is here. They're gathering on the House floor. We must recess during this period of time, so we'll recess for 1 hour. Have you come back in 1 hour. We'll go right to questions then by members of the committee.
Yes, sir.
So this subcommittee stands in recess for 1 hour.
Perfect. Thank you.